Okay, welcome to ABT Lockdown Live. Steve, Starling. Mate, everyone knows you as one of Australia's most prominent fishing journalists, but maybe not a lot of people know that your history is both as an ABT and an AFC angler back in the day. You were one of the guys who were right behind both bream fishing on lures and tournament fishing in the early days. Here's a fun fact for viewers now. While some of you viewers were probably still in primary school, Starlo was the highest ever bream money winner. For a number of years, you won $9,330, which now puts you about 40th on the list. At the time, mate, you were the top money winner. You were Mr. Bream in Australia, weren't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, Bushy and I went absolutely crazy on our bream fishing, and we both got into the very early days of the ABT. And as you say, we managed to win a few bucks. I was actually, I think, the Angler of the Year in the very first year that was in New South Wales, 2001. Unfortunately, my glory days are long behind me now. I tried to come out of retirement a couple of years ago and fished a couple of rounds in Victoria, and I really struggled. But, things have moved on, and the young guys today are so switched on. It's just too hard for an old bloke like me to try and keep up with them. But they can never take that $9,000 odd away from me. I've spent it, but,
Mate, like all bream fishermen, you probably got about a 10% return on your capital investment, but you never got your capital back. So, probably not one of the better investments. But look, it would have been awesome to both you and I were there at that part of the growth curve where bream was just starting to to go COVID on us. And I reckon that I had a lot of respect for the journalists of the time that came along and put their balls on the line in a tournament. Like back in the day, if you wanted to be considered a good fisherman, you had to get in a magazine and bang on about how good you were. And that's where the sponsorships were going. And ABT was a real shift from journalists getting sponsored to anglers getting sponsored. And there was a handful of guys that wrote a lot and had a great profile in the community that came and fished tournaments and really renewed people's faith that they were good fishermen. And there were a lot of journos, man, that they ran screaming and they didn't want to come and do a tournament at all. So yourself and Bushy and Ian Miller, guys like that, had a lot of respect for you, mate. So
thanks for that. Well,
the uncharted waters.
Someone said to me at the time, we had everything to lose and nothing to gain, really, because if we did win something, people used to go, oh, well, yeah, he should have won it. He's a fishing writer. And if we didn't, it was like, oh, it can't be much of a fisherman if they didn't win this round. But, we dived in there and had a go, and we did okay. And I just loved those early days. I loved the whole concept of the ABT and always have, and the whole who shares wins thing really sat well with me, and we had so much fun in those early days. We were all learning so much as we travelled around together, and the camaraderie on the circuit was wonderful, and it still is. It was great to go back a couple of years ago. Sure, it's changed, and it's a lot bigger now, and it's a bit more professional and a bit more competitive, but there's still a nice vibe there.
Oh, definitely. One of the other things that you're involved with from stage one was the Australian Fishing Championships TV show. And looking back on it now, media was totally different then. There was no social media. There wasn't even websites were sort of a big thing. So if you wanted to communicate to people, it was radio, print, television. It was the big three in the day. And as a TV show, I remember we spent up to $600,000 a year producing that thing. So I want to know. You fished as an angler in Series 1, along with the other guys, Timmy, Slick, Reuter, Ian Barra, Miller, and Jesse Lomas. Tell us about your favourite time with a rod in your hand at AFC.
Well, look, I've got to pick the only round I ever won. I only competed for 1 year in AFC. I made the comment towards the end of that year that I should be presenting this thing, not fishing in it. And I think it was you who went, that's a good idea. We should do that. And I turned into a presenter for it after that, which was a much better gig. I didn't have to get up as early and work as hard as the other guys. But, yeah, the moment for me, I guess, was winning the only round I did win, which was on the Gold Coast, which was certainly not my home water, and I'd only fished it a couple of times at that stage. But it was a really interesting day as well. I really struggled. I could only catch small. I was catching plenty of small fish, which is the usual thing on the Gold Coast, but I just couldn't put together a decent bag of fish. And a really funny thing happened a couple of hours before the end of fishing in that round. Saw a young guy on a jetty hooked up on a fish, and it was obviously a big fish, and he was getting spooled. And I was in a position where I thought, I can't win this anyway. I'm going to give this young fella a hand. So we actually went over on the electric, and I invited him to step onto the front of the AFC boat that we were fishing out of, and we chased this fish and helped him land it. And it was quite a nice GT that he'd hooked in the canals, and caught it, let it go. I dropped him back on his jetty, and he gave us the big thumbs up. And I don't know if you believe in karma or not, but I went about 200 metres from there and spotted this pipe with some water running out of it from some rain we'd had overnight. And I thought, I wonder if there's any brim hanging around that. They love a bit of freshwater runoff. Flicked a squidgy in there, bang. I think I got 5 fish in 5 casts, or very close to it, which reminded me of something you always said, and it's always stuck with me. You know, you're only ever 5 casts away from winning a brim comp. And I ended up winning it. You know, it wasn't a huge bag, but it was big enough. In those days, we didn't know how to catch the big ones in the Gold Coast. You've turned it all around a bit since then, but I'll never forget that day, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's always good to get one under the belt, and I think a lot of people's favourite AFC moments. So we've talked to a few AFC legends, but we're going to talk to more in weeks to come. I'm sure most of them revolve around winning an event. Talk a bit about your transition to hosting the show. Like, it was a big road trip for the guys. You know, we seemed to have a lot more time on our hands back in those days. It was always a 2 to 3 week road trip. Often went from New South Wales to North Queensland, and we were all bunking together and spending a lot of time together. I think nowadays we'd find it difficult to pull it together like that, but in the day it was pretty much ahead of its time, I think.
It was, and you'd certainly find it difficult, I think, to pull the budgets together these days that you guys had in those days. You really did spend some money on it. It was a fantastic thing to be involved with, and a really unusual thing to sit in a boat and watch some of the best bass and brim anglers in Australia strutting their stuff. And what I really enjoyed as an AFC presenter, just sitting there taking all that in, was the very different personalities and styles of those anglers, all absolute guns, but all having a slightly different way of approaching things. And I learnt so much sitting there watching them. I remember one day, and I can't even remember what dam it was on, it may have been Glenbourne, watching Carl Jochimson, who was a young fella in those days, up and coming, working behind someone else. It may have been Harry. I can't remember who he was coming along behind, but he was fishing secondhand water and pulling fish out of spots that they'd already fished by just tweaking lures and presentations and doing things slightly differently. That was when I twigged to the fact that sometimes coming along with a silent lure behind someone that was using a fairly noisy lure, you'd pull the fish that hadn't responded to that noisy lure. Watching Scotty Towner in a brim comp fish down along a line of moored boats, pluck 3 or 4 nice brim off them, and then I thought, I wonder where he's going to go next. Turned around, went straight back to the top and fished the same row of boats again, something I would never have thought to do in a brim comp. I reckon once you've fished a bit of water, you've taken the cream off it. And you know what? He pulled another couple of fish, including, I think, his kicker for the day. So stuff like that was a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it's something we learn a lot during ABT. I really find yellowfin and black brim are a lot different. Like, yellowfin tend to, once you've hit them once, you can catch them again, but normally you have to leave them 15 or 20 minutes, especially if there's a school of fish in an area. But those black brim, man, they've got a memory which is like a proverbial goldfish, and you can hit the same bit of bank again, and away they go. And I think back in those days, the good guys knew those things, but I think nowadays a lot of the field knows these things. And I think as an ABT organiser, you know, I look at a roster of anglers fishing now, and back in the day there might have been 10 anglers that you think, oh, they're going to take some money off me this weekend. But nowadays anyone in that list can fish a tournament and win it, and people will go, yeah, he can catch them. So those skill levels they generally have risen, and I think the higher skill levels makes people a better angler. Like, there's always the saying, you've got to play against people that are better than you to get better, and I think that's definitely happening in ABT nowadays. Starlo, a really big thanks for you for coming and joining us here. Give us a little bit of a summary, I suppose, of your time in lockdown. What does it involve, and does it involve getting out much?
Well, no, I'm not getting out much at all. I've made the decision not to fish. We can still legally go for a fish in New South Wales if we observe all the safety precautions. But as an influencer, I've decided it's better if I stay at home. I'm certainly going to stay at home for the next couple of weeks and keep an eye on it. So I'm doing a lot of online work. What Joe and I have got this fishertopia.com website portal these days, and what we're devoting all our attention to at the moment is trying to find resources for anglers to do fishing related activities at home over the next couple of weeks. So we're looking at rod building, fly tying, lure customizing, lure making, stripping down your reels, doing all that sort of stuff, learning a new skill in fishing or whatever, even setting up targets in your backyard and practicing casting and things like that. So we're devoting a lot of time and attention at the moment to try and provide the resources for anglers so they can find the places to go and do that.
And that's awesome. And give us a quick shout out. What's the website and what socials do people follow to keep up with you in that regard?
Yeah, well, on Facebook, it's Starlow's Fishertopia is my Facebook platform, and it's going really well, getting lots and lots of mileage on there and talking to a lot of people. And www.fishotopia.com is our website portal, and that's where we'd love to see people come on. We've got an inner circle section in there, which is for subscribers, and there's lots and lots of stuff behind that paywall. But during this COVID crisis, we're putting as much material as we can in front of the paywall in the free section to try and help anglers out while they're going a bit stir crazy in lockdown, because I can see the water from where I live. And isn't it just typical that as soon as we went into lockdown, we had a week of the best weather we've had this year, and I could only look out the window and dream about being out there. But look, we'll all be back out there again soon. If we do the right thing, we're flattening the curve already. You know, the signs are good. Let's not get too carried away, but they are good. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time, we might be able to lift the foot off the brake a little bit and sneak out there and have a fish. But for now, I'd really encourage people to just stay home as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, as a scientist, my graph reading brain says, the last few weeks are really important, but the next few weeks are really important as well. And you only have to have 1% of people doing the wrong thing and it can flare up again. So fishing will always be there. And I tell people as well, imagine how good the fishing's going to be when we haven't touched it for a few months. Like, it's a great investment for us. Fish are going to spawn. They're going to forget what lures look like.
Yeah.
It's a good investment in our fishing future, so I commend that attitude, Starlo. Thanks for joining us today.
No worries. Tight lines.